So we're going to talk about closing. This is, the way that I close is the way that Bobby and I've learned from actually doing the business. So, we,
Hey,
can you see me?
Debbie, I don't know if we can see your slides yet.
Oh, you can't see my slides?
Yeah, let me go back on and just double check that I am off.
And we want to see your slides because they're always beautiful. So,
well, not as beautiful as yours.
yes, they are. They're awesome.
Okay. So, can I try again, Dr. Glasser? Or?
Please try again.
Okay, let's go. Do you want to just help me?
There you go.
Perfect.
Great, thank you. Okay, all right, so there we are. So like I said, one of the things that I want to do is talk about how to get to the close. And to me, it's always been very much a conversation. And Bobby and I've always treated closing as an event, or a process, I should say, and not an event. And so often people are so focused on just getting the close, they're really not thinking about what the person that they're talking to is thinking about. And so by that I mean is I don't want you to be a salesman. So often I'll hear people that I talk to, they'll say, I'm a great salesman. I'm, top of the car or timeshare or whatever. I find that true salespeople don't do well in this business. I think it's more important for you to be a friend. And isn't that a comfort level for everyone? Don't you feel better just trying to be a consultant and help somebody, listen to a friend, listen to their needs, their wants, be an advisor? Those are the things that if you can help a person get what they want, they truly will close themselves. They will ask you at some point, how do I get started? If you've given them the proper information. But what comes into consideration there a lot of times is timing. You may have a conversation, and I have this go on all the time. I may have a conversation with somebody today who seems genuinely interested, but life gets in the way. Haven't you all had somebody that even got started with great intention, super excited, and then all of a sudden life can get in the way? And that can be the beauty of this business. It can be a really exciting part of this business because, once you get it rolling, if life does get in the way, something comes up, somebody, God forbid, gets sick or something, you can actually step back and take a little time to deal with whatever you need to deal with. So that's the beauty of the business, but we need to consider that when we are, looking to recruit people, to close people, and even sometimes after they've just gotten started. So my first and foremost is, be a listener, be a friend, be a consultant, call it anything you want. But people do not listen enough these days. Everybody wants to be a talker. So, and people love to talk. So, this is a perfect scenario because we want to get them talking about things. But you know what? You can get anybody you want in this business. And I truly, truly mean that. You just have to think about how you're going to get that conversation started, or maybe even how you're going to get around that person. In order to close, we have to have shared information with them. And sometimes we just don't allow ourselves to get around enough people. Bobby and I have just recently moved, and for a number of reasons, super excited. One, we had much too large a house and nobody in it but the two of us, just kind of roaming around there. But we moved to a place where the people are much younger than us. They're much more active than us. They have needs and wants. My old neighborhood, people they didn't have needs and wants. They were, getting close to retiring. They might consider downsizing a little bit, but they were very wealthy to begin with. So, we moved into an area on purpose where we can be around people. Because what I do is, I'll listen to people talk. I'll figure out who it is I want in an area. It doesn't matter if it's tennis. It doesn't matter if it's the pool. Even just last Memorial Day, we went out to the pool for a few hours in the afternoon. Right away, I made sure that I got close, hellos, made a conversation with the person that, I thought was kind of a ringleader, kind of active around the pool. I'd watched her for a while. She circled around the pool. She talked to a lot of people around the pool. She knew a lot of people around the pool, and then we had just got back in our chair ready to get a little sun, and she got into the pool. I'm like, Bobby, come on, we got to go in the pool, because she's in the pool with her husband. So, this is the way that you get around people. Now, if you can't do that, another scenario you can do is if somebody knows of the person you want to get around with. So you can get an invitation to lunch with that other person, or if there's a party going on, hey, could you introduce me to so-and-so, because I've never had the chance to spend some time talking to them. So we got to get that conversation started. If you're on a plane, ask them what book they're reading, or what movie they might start to watch, or, before they get into that, and start to have a conversation with them. But you're going to have very specific goals and direction for this conversation. And we're not just going to talk. Every question that I ever ask is in a direction that I'm going. I don't just ask a question for any reason. I tend to be very quiet by nature. So if I ask a question, it's because that's the direction I want that conversation to go into. The change in over the 27 years that Bobby and I have been in this industry is, we now do the business with what we call touches. And so those touches are a lot through text messaging and just regular messaging. But, I love to take it to the phone whenever I can. I love to truly hear somebody's voice or talk to them, person to person. I think you can absorb so much more that's going on. But it's okay to go back and forth. I've had many people close just by texting them, only see the picture on Facebook, or we've just used Messenger back and forth. So, there's a comfort level for a lot of people. And if that's where it needs to start, go ahead and do that. Start with that. But, you'll have these touches that go back and forth. People aren't out there readily looking to start a new business just out of the blue. So, you have to kind of talk to them about whatever their need or want is, and let them see how this vision may fit into their life. Not how it fits into my life, but how it fits into their life is also important. Again, it's just a conversation. Most of it is listening. You're going to ask some very, very direct questions so that you can learn about the person. But one of the things that I don't like to do right away, the first maybe minute or two, is I don't ask a lot of personal questions right away. So, I don't just sit down on a plane and say, where are you from? You married? You got kids? Kind of just drill a person. So, I may say some general things like, wow, the plane feels crowded today, or I hope this seat is empty. And then maybe I'll move into, a book or something that they're using. So, again, it's a little general conversation, but you really want to listen to this person. You want to ask very pertinent questions in a direction that you want to go to. People love to talk. So, we're giving a little knowledge, we're sharing our thoughts, some guidance as we move into it, but it's really about collecting information from people. So important that you really get a handle on this person, where they are. And, once you have their needs and wants, I'm telling you, this is all on the road to that close. And they will ask you, how do I get started, very easily. Okay, so I don't like written scripts. And that's why I say, Bobby and I, the way that we taught is we kind of taught ourselves. Back then, you think 27 years ago, there weren't all these programs. I mean, Tony Robbins was around, but, you didn't have Eric Worre and all these other programs readily available. We didn't even use any of that until recently. But so I've never used a script. And I know there are tons of scripts out there, but I just want it to be a very natural conversation. I don't want it to be forced. I just want to have a conversation with this person. And like I said, I'll open with some kind of observation or question. It could even be a pocketbook that I like. If somebody sits down next to me and I really like that bag, I had a lady that, worked at one of the designer stores at one of our local malls. All the conversation started because of the bag she sat down with. So, you can ask if it's somebody you're talking to via text message. Maybe you want to go into, how's the weather? Because you can't see the weather. You just, they're in Oklahoma, but you don't know what the weather is today. Is it raining? Or, a very deliberate question I'll ask a lot of times is, are you working? Because that can open a whole can of worms. They'll tell you, I'm working, but I don't like it. And I don't like where I'm working and how long I'm working. And, they'll get into those things. a lot of times I love emails. I think it's just a thing. I love to figure out what the email address means. You know, like sometimes it's a name, but sometimes people have some crazy, crazy emails and I'm like, well, what does that mean? And what I thought it meant nothing. So, and that can start a whole conversation. Or maybe I'm not sure of the name of the town and where they're from and exactly where that is. So, you know, again, I'm just having, if you just think of it as a conversation, you're gathering information. And then there's a point where you will give more information than you're gathering. But in the beginning, you very much have to get a handle on that person and figure out, you know, where they are in their life, what their needs and wants are, because you're going to have to show them what part of our business, and I do mean what part. Everybody does not start out wanting the same vision that, you know, Dr. Glasser and Deb Zito and Bobby and I start from the gate with. It doesn't happen that way. And, you know, you heard Bobby earlier, and I think he said, got involved to replace his income, which is even huge at that point. But I got to tell you, in the back of our minds, we thought if he could earn some money, never thought it would be the money that we've made. So again, you know, you have to take in consideration, does this person want to stay home? Do they not, they're not looking for, they've got 3 little kids. They're not looking for world travel. I mean, they can't even comprehend that. But yet you may have someone that's older in life and their children have left and they're all about travel. They haven't traveled. Or maybe you're talking to a businessman that's on a plane every week. Well, he doesn't want to do any more travel. He wants to know about home base. So you really have to share the information, but you can't share that information until you know about them. And so that's why I said in the beginning, a few pertinent questions, but we really need to get them talking first so that we have that information so that we can help them to get the information that they want first. So, you know, again, those are some ideas on how you're going to get to those people. Okay, you're really in control. And I said this a little earlier, you know, so, you know, we want to get them talking. We want to loosen them up. We want to get them to laugh. You know, we don't want it to be an inquisition, you know, not starting to, you know, what's your name? Where are you from? Where's your kids? And I know sometimes people talk about that, but I think if you can just make some kind of general comment, you know, once they're loose and friendly and their guard starts down and they're talkative, you know, maybe they're not even a talkative person, so this conversation isn't going to go anywhere. But now you ask those questions. And I like to give a little bit of my own personal stuff first. I think sometimes people can be guarded with their personal information. Maybe, you know, too often they've been asked direct questions. Seems to be an MO sometimes for our industry. People ask a lot of questions. So, you know, I might tell them more about myself first and then, you know, take it to our business and talk about it after I've drawn out this problem. People don't like to face problems. So sometimes you have to be, I don't want to say a little bit hard with them, but for the most part, a lot of people are walking around out there, they have their head in the sand. So sometimes you talk to people and they're like, oh, I'm doing wealthy, you know, I'm doing fine, you know, I'm healthy, you know, but what does 10, 20 years look like down the road? You know, what if your health does take a turn for the difference? You know, so these are some things that you need to kind of point out to people. You know, there are people like, you know, I don't need to take vitamins, I have all the money in the world. But yet, what is your health going to be in 10, 20 years? You know, are you going to be the person in the nursing home with a little drool coming down their mouth and, you know, having to have somebody wipe them in a diaper? I mean, that should be everybody's greatest fear, that you don't want to spend the last few years of your life where you don't have that quality of life. So, you know, there's always an angle with our company that, you know, people need to be around people. They need that mental stimulation. They need that challenge. They need our products. So there's so many things that we can actually help them with. But again, get them talking to help them face those issues, because you really got to kind of have them verbalize it. You know, one of the ways that I usually do this too is by saying the opposite of what they might say. So if somebody tells me, oh, they're traveling a lot, or I know they're in a field where they're traveling a lot. Maybe they're, you know, a corporate executive or whatever, always on an airplane. So I might say, oh, wow, you get to travel a lot when you want, or you probably don't travel a lot, or you have a lot of time freedom. I'll always say the opposite, you know, or sometimes real estate people, you know, that's a broad range. You've got people on an average that make $16,000 a year, and then you've got those that make millions. And everybody always focuses on the millions. I think when you get involved in real estate, not to put any real estate people down, but in my neighborhood, it's the other thing to do for a lot of the ladies. They like to do real estate, although they don't ever really sell a house, but they're in real estate. And it's kind of like what Bobby talked about, not being a professional in our industry. You can be in the industry, but not really doing anything with it. But anyway, so, people in real estate may, you just say, oh, you must be killing it, making a lot of money. And if they come to the realization that they need to do something, this is, a great opportunity for them, and you can start the conversation there. So again, drawing out that problem, that need, that want, that desire, that challenge. It can be a challenge, for people as they get older. Maybe they don't want to just retire, but maybe working the 60, 70 hours a week at whatever they were doing for a living was too much. So, you can also say, as people start to talk, you need to relate to them whatever their issue is. So if it's money, maybe they don't have enough money, or they don't think they have enough money to start another business. I can say, I remember, and I felt that, when Bobby and I needed to start our business, and, I found that this is what happened for us. So it doesn't need to be your personal story. It can be anybody's story. I mean, I share Gabe and Jill's story all the time. I share a lot of different stories of different people on what happened to them in this business, why they got involved in this business, because maybe it wasn't money like it was Bobby's and mine, maybe it was something else. So, or maybe their background, whether it be, in real estate, in gym, in, a doctor, whatever, maybe the background of somebody else's story fits well. So you should retain those stories as well. Okay. Explain your business, and this is key. This is so important. I can remember Bobby and I years ago, we went to a convention down in Texas, and this was the worst case scenario that could ever happen, but we always took a very early flight when our kids were home so we could get home, spend the Sunday with our kids. It was always at really early Sunday morning. We were always on that 6 a.m. flight, so it meant we needed to leave the hotel at like 4 in the morning. And we got on our plane, we sat down, and generally if you've ever been on a plane very early in the morning, it's pretty quiet. I mean, even in the pilot, the stewardess do a great job of turning down those lights rather quickly, because people, and maybe they're hoping too, that people are going to go back to sleep, get a little bit more sleep. So we got into our seats and we sat down, and one of our distributors sat down behind us. Well, he sat next to this other man, and I tell you, before the plane had even taken off, this man was doing comp plan with him. I mean, he'd already gone through a little bit about our company. He'd gone through the products. He was going through the comp plan. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the business. That absolutely is not. What I'm talking about is the vision that you have for this person. And again, that's directly tied to their need, their want, their desire, whatever it is. So my vision for everyone that I talk to is totally different. And that's why I don't think the script can really work, because the vision for a stay-at-home mom that wants to earn a little extra money, great, fine, let's go to work. The vision for somebody that wants to replace an income, 50, 60,000 a year, fine, great, let's go to work. But I have to have the vision, the right vision for the right person. I can't share, the vision of somebody that wants to make $100,000 their first year with the same person that doesn't even believe that they can earn $500 a week. So, our vision is so important for sharing our business, and it's their vision. It's not our vision. I shouldn't have said that. It's their vision for the business. So you really kind of need to map out and tell them, because everybody feels when they're looking at a company, they're wondering, is this for real? Is it too good to be true? You've probably heard that. Can I do this personally? And then they're wondering if you're going to be there. Are you going to love me and leave me? You're going to get my money and disappear. So, I really like to talk about what we are doing together, how we are going to go about, and I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I do lay out the working rules. One is definitely have to get started. Got to choose a package, choose one of the packages to get started with. These are the time, areas or groups or the time parameters that we need for you to work this business. How many hours a week? So, because it's not realistic for a person that, thinks they can make 100,000 that very first year if they're only working 2 hours a week. So again, you kind of got to get these working, but it's not as direct as that. It's kind of, very laid back, but just giving them this information. Notice I'm not talking any more than I need to about the comp plan. there's nobody that needs to know the comp plan before we get started because they're not going to understand it. It's kind of that thing, it's kind of the, on a need to know basis. As you're moving along, you understand 40% up front on what you personally do. That's really what they need to focus on, because again, if we are not bringing people into the company, if we're not getting them on product on the auto ships, if we're not closing them to be distributors, you know, then the rest of it is kind of a moot point. You can get excited about the Pro 7, 8, 9, and 10 profit sharing percentages, but again, if you're not moving along and recruiting people, none of that really seems to matter. And so this is where I mean less is more. I never mention a part of the business, and there's a lot going on in our business, a lot for people to know, but I don't ever sell the whole business. If they're focused more on product and they want to just get involved with the business, again, I don't need to go through the whole comp plan. I don't need to go through the whole history of LifeVantage. I don't need to bring up that it's a publicly traded company versus a privately traded company, because at this point it doesn't mean anything to them. They didn't ask. So a lot of times I'll get on a three-way call with people and they are selling, telling everything about the company, where I'm only going to answer the questions you asked. You know, if you asked me, why is it, you know, is it better to be with a publicly traded company as opposed to a private, or, you know, whatever question you might, that's what I will answer. But I'm certainly not going to go down to different avenues that have nothing to do with what they're asking me, or maybe even their vision. So they can't take it all in. It's not going to happen. You know, if they think they have to know tons and tons of stuff before they get started, they're not going to get started. It's going to be too overwhelming, and they're just going to be like, I can't do this. I just can't do it. So you don't want to push it into that disbelief area. You just want to give them the information to ask their questions, answer their questions. And, you know, like I said, too much talking by me or you just opens objections. And that's where I hear people will come to me and they'll say, well, she asked me about multi-level marketing. I'm like, where did that conversation ever come up? Or why would that conversation ever come up? Or she asked me, I don't know, something about the products or something. Those conversations never come up if you just answer the questions that they have, and just be a champion listener, and do not go down all these different avenues of questions that they didn't, and just don't repeatedly talk. Just give them the answer and then listen for more of their questions. I find on an average, it will take us anywhere from 5 to 12 touches. And, you know, I had a term years ago that I used was called drip. You know, I would drip on people because, again, I believe that, you know, this is a process. Recruiting is a process. And so, you know, people have to warm up to it. Women in particular may want to use the product first to make sure it's a great product. You know, we would never endorse anything that we didn't feel 100% excited about. So, you know, there are touches that go on, and they could simply be a phone call. If it's texting, you may go back and forth 8, 9, 10 times that day. I mean, Facebook Messenger, three-way calling, Zooms. It can be all these different things. These are all events, and something that you should use as you move your person through the funnel. And sometimes as they move through the process of being or joining our company, they may go through it fast. They may go through it slow. But I find so often it's a matter of timing, and when the timing is right. I just had a lady that joined with Bobby and I yesterday, and it really truly was timing. I talked to her months ago, but she had a schedule of events and work events and stuff that she needed to do. And so the timing just wasn't right, but all of a sudden, you know, this week it was right. So timing is important when you do speak to people. And a lot of times you have to be very direct and just ask them, you know, if they're interested or not. But this is where that follow-up is so important. You need to be very precise. You've heard the money is in the follow-up. Be precise, be consistent, be persistent. I've had people, and by that I mean maybe once a week or whatever. I don't mean like every day call them, but, you know, being persistent and consistent has paid me very well over the years. I mean, I can tell you many times my phone is ringing and it's somebody that I talk to, and then all of a sudden, you know, they want to get started. So every conversation, I am just moving people forward closer to their close, if that makes sense to you. So keep yourself well organized with all your paperwork or your follow-up, however you're doing it. The other thing, you know, sometimes you need to lay down working rules, and people are unrealistic with with what they're telling you they're willing to do. So, you know, I always want to work with those that are teachable and willing. Don't get started with somebody if, you know, they don't seem to be willing to do what you want. And I always thought about it that we didn't want to spoil our back area. Now with, you know, technology, it's really global, but, you know, we don't want to spoil our opportunity or the view of our opportunity of people that have gotten involved and didn't try and weren't teachable and weren't willing to invest in their opportunity. So, you know, again, we don't necessarily want everyone. So, and if it doesn't seem, you know, that you can't get them back on the phone or they're not answering your phone calls. And I know sometimes I feel people get discouraged because the person, continue to be persistent with that person. You know, if you find that when you do get them on the phone, just ask them. I point blank ask. I just, you know, I know the kind of money that can be made in this opportunity. So I don't really care what anybody thinks. I'm not going to worry about what one prospect is going to think about me maybe being a little too aggressive. And I'm really not. I'm just very persistent with it. And not, like I said, I've been thanked for it many times. But I will ask you, if you're not interested, let me know. You know, I'd love to just cross you off my list. Something about crossing people off their list or just ending it for some reason gets a lot of people, they decide to get involved with you at that point. So sometimes you just got to put it out there and ask them, you know, if I'm being a pest, I'm being a pain, hey, just let me know. But keep in mind, like I've said, this whole thing, it's timing. You know, think about what you're talking about. Think about what they're thinking about. Does it really work? Can I do this? You know, will it help me? You know, reassure them of all that, you know, not directly like that, but in the conversation as you're having it. Because ultimately, and I know this for a fact now, ultimately you can get anyone you want. It may be more than those 12 touches. You may do touches for 3 months, 6 months. But you know what? Every time you add somebody to your business, you add an additional 5,000 to 50,000 a year to your business. Well, isn't that exciting? Isn't that worth the work on the front end? And really, you know, if you're excited to work with that person, but I know you can get anybody you want in this business. So I say all that for the close, and it's only going to come down to like 3 things. I mean, you know, first off, a lot of times you'll see people say, what is the next step? And because you've given them the proper information. If you've done the right work and you've given the information and then just, for lack of a better word, shut up and just be quiet, they will say, what is the next step? You know, if they don't, and, you know, Rebecca, you did such a great job of it, and you don't hear it often enough, people never ask for the close, never ask for the close. They go through all the work, bring it right up to the time it's to close, and they'll either continue talking and selling, and then the person disappears, or they never ask for the close, whether it be for the product or the opportunity. And so that is just so, so important. As far as, you know, closing, you really need to ask for that close. If they don't ask